the second week of a series called Uncharted, where we're talking about Abraham, one of the biggest names in the Christian faith. We're looking at how Abraham responded when God called him into uncharted territories and what happened along the way. Last week, we said that it was Abraham's small steps that eventually led him to big places. But this week, we're going to look at some pretty big missteps that Abraham took on his journey to get there.
Maybe you're in a place where you're ready to take a small step and follow God into the uncharted territory before you. And I think that's awesome. But here's a warning. Somewhere along the way, you're going to get lost. When we decide to follow God, when we take steps into the unknown, it won't be easy. The road won't always be smooth. And the truth is, we're all going to mess up as we go.
How do I know? Because we are all humans. We mess up because we aren't perfect. We are living in a world that's broken and messy too. So when you drop imperfect people into an imperfect world, we are bound to make some messes every now and then.
Let me show you what we mean. I think everyone in this room has made a mess of something at least once in their lives. I mean, I'm a total mess most of the time. On a daily basis, I tell stories in a way that make me look good. I speed when I drive, I'm sometimes selfish, and that's just to name a few. I bet you can relate. Maybe you gossip too much or cheat on tests or disrespect your parents. Maybe you put yourself down or tell inappropriate jokes or keep bad behaviors tucked away like little secrets. Maybe you're trying your best to change these behaviors or make different choices, but somehow you always end up feeling like a mess. Sometimes our lives look like one giant mess.
And when our lives look that way, when we mess up, some of us start believing that God has left us on the journey. We obviously aren't getting it right, so why would he stick around? Others of us decide to give up. We've already messed up, so it's a lost cause, right? The point is this. When we mess up, we believe that the journey is over, but I have good news for you today. With God's help, your journey can continue. No matter how messed up you might feel right now, I'm pretty sure that there are 3 people we'll talk about today that will make you feel a lot better about yourself.
Last week, we were introduced to Abraham and Sarah, an older married couple with no children of their own. Yet God made a promise to Abraham. If he followed God's call, he would give them many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. You get the point. So Abraham took the next step on his journey and followed God's leading, believing that this promise was going to come true. And what happened? Nothing. Zilch. Nada. To Abraham, it probably felt like God was totally and completely silent.
Even though God made a promise to Abraham, he and Sarah were still childless. So Sarah, frustrated and tired of waiting, took matters into her own hands and got Hagar, her servant, involved in a plan. Listen to what Sarah said to Abraham. "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." And guess what happened? Abraham followed Sarah's plan, and Hagar became pregnant.
This feels like a reality show, doesn't it? But as crazy as it sounds to us in this room, during Abraham's time, this was considered totally acceptable. In fact, it happened a lot. Marriage contracts of Abraham's day stated that if a woman couldn't have children, she would need to provide her husband with another woman to have a child with. So that's exactly what Sarah did.
Don't you find yourself wishing Abraham and Sarah would have remembered the promise God made for them? I mean, Abraham believed in God's promise enough to leave his home and all he knew to follow it. Why couldn't that same belief have been enough to stop him from going along with Sarah's plan?
While we don't have the answer to that question, I do think some of us know how Abraham felt. Like Abraham, we've had a moment where we felt God was leading us to something. So we trusted in his promise and followed him. But what happened after that made us wonder if that promise was even true.
And that's where Abraham and Sarah were when they made their decision. And to no surprise, the drama increased. Even though it was her idea, Sarah was jealous that Hagar was pregnant. So what did Sarah do? Well, she acted like a total mean girl, obviously, and she treated Hagar so badly that she ran into the desert, pregnant and alone.
So much drama. See, I told you that you might feel a little better about your mess after hearing this story. But this next part is so important. Look at how God treated Hagar in the middle of her mess. The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count.
Like Hagar, we often think that our mess is overwhelming. So we run, we hide, and we think God will never use us again. But the truth is, God sees more than your mess. And if you trust him, he wants to redeem your story.
When God found Hagar in the middle of the desert, he didn't yell at her or tell her what a mess she made of her life. Instead, God told her that if she went home, even though she didn't know what to expect, he'd bless her with many children to come. And despite her mess, Hagar trusted and believed. She didn't know what was in store for her back home, but she walked into uncharted territory because she knew God was leading her. She knew God saw more than just her mess.
And to no surprise, God was faithful and kept his promises. He provided Hagar with a son, Ishmael, and gave Sarah and Abraham a son named Isaac. Despite their messes, God forgave each of these people and continued with them on their journeys. Just like with Hagar, Abraham, and Sarah, God sees more than just your mess.
Remember the canvas from earlier? I don't know about you, but all I see is a huge mess. But God sees something else. God sees more than your mess. And that means that you have a reason to go on and not give up.
So don't give up on you. No matter what you're thinking or what other people are saying, believe that you are who God says you are. You're loved, you're created with a purpose, and capable of more than most people give you credit for. Your mess does not define your journey. God does.
Don't give up on God. God isn't scared off or intimidated by your mess. Don't ever believe the lie that there's something you can do that will make God leave you alone on your journey. God is loving, forgiving, and with us always.
So if you're in the midst of a mess right now, talk to God about it. Talk to your small group leader, your parents, or a trusted friend. Believe the truth that you aren't finished and that God isn't finished with you. And remember, God sees more than your mess. So as you leave today, you'll have the opportunity to dig into some of your mess with people who care about you. But before you do, I want you to think about this question. What's one way I can overcome my mess this week?